You're listening to Sasquatch Syndicate.
911, what are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is that my central light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this thing running across the yard.
And all the ape believers don't want any of the paranormal believers to say anything because they're all whacked and screwed up and we don't want them. And all the paranormal believers don't want, they're going to the ape believers saying, well, you're all closed-minded. You're not open to the fact that it does this and it does that.
And I look over my left shoulder and this creature is running through the woods and it's bulldozing the brush down. And I knew, man, this thing is going to get me.
Welcome to Sasquatch Syndicate. I'm your host, Chuck, out in Seattle, Washington, along with Paul in Portland, Oregon. Thanks to everyone for listening and those following us at SasquatchSyndicate.com and on our social media outlets. For those participating in the Sasquatch Syndicate monthly t-shirt giveaway, this month's winner was Chris Hilton from Lowell, Ohio. So Chris, congratulations. Thanks for listening to the show, and please check your Facebook for winner notification. As we begin our October podcast, I did want to mention a couple events. First and foremost, for those out in Big Sky country, the Montana Big Sky Bigfoot Conference will be held in Hamilton, Montana, October 21st and 22nd. All proceeds from this event will be going to the Bitterroot Humane Association. So a fantastic event, and you can pick up your tickets at BigSkyBigfootConference.com. Secondly, for those in California, Sasquatch Syndicate will be at AlienCon October 28th through 30th at the Santa Clara Convention Center. So for those out there that are fans of the Ancient Aliens TV series with Giorgio Tsoukalos and David Childress, we will be hosting a panel discussion Friday night prior to the Halloween bash. So if you make it out to Santa Clara, we look forward to seeing you there. Also, I wanted to do a quick shout out to Ron Roning, who sent in a newspaper article he found while he was stationed out in Richardson, Alaska. I just want to say thanks, Ron. I did add that to the Sasquatch Syndicate website, and so thanks again for sending that over. And lastly, for our book club participants, next month's episode is going to be with Eric Pins. He's the author of Cryptid. So if you haven't picked up that book, if you go out to SasquatchSyndicate.com under home, you can go to our book club. If you have any questions or if you have any comments you'd like to submit to Eric, please do so. It's going to be a great and exciting episode. Looking forward to hearing about his research as he wrote this best-selling novel. So let's get on to this month's podcast. With us on tonight's episode is Mark. He's from Marysville, Washington. Paul and I met Mark out at the International Bigfoot Conference earlier this month, and while I wasn't planning on airing Mark's encounter so soon, he has some fresh details even as recent as last weekend. So we wanted to share those with our audience tonight, and we really hope you enjoy Mark's experiences and his research that he's put into this topic. So Mark, welcome to Sasquatch Syndicate, and if you wouldn't mind just sharing your background for our listeners.
Yeah, my name's Mark. I live in Marysville, Washington. I'll give just a little background on myself. I'm retired Navy. I spent 15 and a half years in the Navy. I was injured. I was retired, and now I grew up in Southern California. Now I live in Washington, but because it was my last duty station. But I grew up in Southern California, kind of in an upscale neighborhood, kind of a beach bum, surfer, athlete, never really spent any time in the woods. My family's vacations was kind of local fishing or deep sea fishing or parents going to Vegas or something. But other than that, I never really spent any time in the woods.
So Mark, what were your views on Bigfoot or Sasquatch prior to your encounter?
I never really thought about Bigfoot growing up as a kid. I'd seen that Leonard Nimoy in Search Of, and I've seen, the Monster Quest series on cable, which were entertaining, but I never really thought about it very much. So seeing this for the first time was really kind of shocking. And
so Mark, if you wouldn't mind, just maybe take our listeners into your encounter.
My coworker and best friend, he grew up in on the coast of Oregon in a small town, and his family lived a couple miles out of town in the woods, and they relied heavily on deer and elk meat for their freezer. And so he now lived up here in Washington. He wanted to go hunting, and so he wanted to take me. But so September of last year on Labor Day weekend of 2015, we found an area out east of here that he wanted to go check out. We were going to go out and look for deer and elk tracks, and we were going to overnight on Labor Day weekend. And so we did. We went out there on a Sunday morning, real early in the morning. We left here like 5 in the morning, got out there like 7:30, and we drive down these logging roads and park the truck and walk along the road looking for possible game trails. And we did that all day long. We covered quite a few miles back there, and it was about 2:30 in the afternoon. We hadn't eaten all day. We decided to take a lunch break. We parked in this dead-end section of this back Forest Service Road, and looked like it was pretty big turnaround. It's probably 80, 90 feet across, and looks like maybe logging trucks used to turn around there or something.
So, Mark, was this a fresh logging area?
Hasn't been logged in a long time. You can see patches where maybe they replanted, but most of there's a lot of old growth timber back there. It's real thick, and it's real heavily shaded. So we parked the truck, and we both grabbed something to eat, and we left the doors open, and we walked across this cul-de-sac about 50 feet, and there was these boulders 3-4 feet diameter, and they're blocking access to like a logging skid road, and the boulders are kind of buried like halfway in the ground. And so my buddy's sitting on one of the boulders with his back to that skid road, and I'm standing up with my back to the truck, and I'm looking down the path of this old skid road. The skid road is kind of slightly getting overgrown a little bit, and it's lined with trees, and it goes down a real gradual slope, not steep, it's real gradual, and about 30 yards down it makes a bank to the left. And where it banks to the left, off to the right, there's heavy brush, and goes up real high, and there's trees all around it and behind it, you know. But
yeah, I know those forestry areas are pretty dense. Were there any clearings around you?
Up about 8 feet in the brush, there's like an opening about 2.5 to 3 feet high and about 4 to 5 feet, about 4 feet wide, and it's like a window. And you could look back in and you can see the forest behind it. And on either side in this window back there, you can see a tree trunk. So we'd been there about 10 minutes, and when you look down there, your eye is kind of naturally drawn to that window. And so we're just talking about the plan of action for the rest of the day. We were thinking about camping for the night. And about the third or fourth time I looked down there, the tree trunk in the window on the right looks a little different. It looks like something was crawling up the side of it. And we hadn't really seen any wildlife all day except for, squirrels and birds and stuff. And I was like, oh, well, what is that, a raccoon? And I hadn't said anything to my friend yet, and I kept staring at it, and it's kind of moving, and then it moves out away from the tree further, and I realize it's a face, and it's staring at me. It's about 40 yards from me.
So, Mark, as you see this face, what type of level of detail could you see?
You could see the top of its head, its hair. It was in a heavily shaded area, so there was a lot of shadow, but I could see its eyes, its nose, its mouth.
So what was your first reaction?
I hadn't stayed with my friend. I'm standing there staring at it. I'm like, God, man, that's like, whoa, what is that? So I'm standing there watching it, and after about 30 seconds, it ducks back behind the tree, and I was like, I hadn't said anything to my friend. I'm like, man, what is that? And then it reappeared. What it did about 15 or 20 seconds later, it moved closer towards me, maybe about 12 to 15 feet, and it stood up directly in the open. When it slowly rose up, I saw it from the upper chest to the top of its head. And the top of its head, the head didn't roll back like a human. It came up and it slanted backward and up, and the hairline started way on the back of the slanted part of the head. And it came down to its shoulders, and when it hit its shoulders.
So, Mark, not to interrupt you, but what color was the hair?
It looked maybe silver and black or silver and brown, but it looked real greasy, and if something was dark brown and greasy, it might appear black. So
were you able to get a good look at the skin, or was maybe the black the part of the skin?
The skin was like, on the face was like an old beat-up baseball glove. It was like a brownish color, and it was just all scarred up and beat up. There was a heavy wrinkle in the forehead. It had like this heavy Frankenstein brow. It had these black eyes, staring at me, these black eyes that looked like they were deep set under its brow.
Did you get a good look at any other facial features, like its nose?
The nose was kind of flat and wide on the face.
And would you say it looked more human or more like an ape?
It wasn't ape-like where the nostrils point at you. It was human-like. It was hooded, and there was what was really odd, what made it so weird looking was that the space between the nose and the top lip, like a human, is like 1 finger distance. This was much further. It's like 2 to 3 fingers distance.
So, Mark, obviously it's you're kind of describing the face as pretty wide, but did it have a large neck as well?
It was hard to tell if it had a neck because the way head sat on the shoulders. It was just these massive shoulders, and
Mark, how wide would you say the shoulders were?
it filled the entire opening. I mean, you couldn't see the outer end of its shoulders. It just was huge, and I'm standing there just like, I had to say to my friend, I'm like, I running through my mind, like, I can't believe this is happening, you know? And so after maybe 40, 45 seconds, it squints its eyes and gives me this kind of menacing look.
Did it wrinkle its brow or show its teeth?
Didn't show its teeth or anything, but the kind of this, like it's angry. And I said, Doug, look at that. And he stood up and turned around, and I pointed. I said, what is that? As soon as I pointed at it, it took off. So I immediately panicked, and I turned. I thought, man, it's going to come after us. And so I ran to the truck, and we had our backpacks in there. And in my backpack, I had a 44 Magnum, and I didn't have time to dig. I thought I didn't have time to dig for it. So I had on the floor of the back seat, I had an AR-15 and a 40-round magazine. And I threw the mag in there and came over and turned the safety off. And he goes, what was it? And I go, it was a Sasquatch. And he's like, come on, really? I go, dude, I'm trembling, you know, and I had goosebumps on me. I said, I swear to you, I'm trembling. I swear to God, man. I know what I saw, man. This thing I've never seen anything like it. And he goes, well, we got to go down there and look at it. And I was like, I don't know if I can. I mean, so he's like, you need to calm down. And I'm like trembling, and he's like, man, he goes, so he talked me into it. And so we're walking down this skid road, and I'm in the lead because I got the rifle, and I'm just freaked out of my mind. I'm like, everything's racing through my mind, like, oh my God, we're going to be killed or something's going to happen, And so we get to the brush where it was standing, and I pushed through with my muzzle first and got my hand on the trigger, and I'm ready to, just shoot. And I'm thinking it's going to grab me and pull me in. Well, we push in, and the forest floor there is heavily shaded, so there's just forest floor is thick moss. And it's like, you step in it, you sink like, 3, 4, 5 inches, depending on how thick it is. And underneath it is like old tree branches and timber. So when you step and it's rotted, you like fall over and trip. You can hardly walk on it. And where it was standing, there's these massive impressions, these foot impressions, over 20 inches long, and they're real wide, and they're huge. And me and my buddy are looking at each other. My buddy's like, wow, those are massive. And we look up where it was standing, and the top of the opening is like, 10 feet. So I'm thinking, this thing is like 9.5, 10 foot tall, probably 1,000 pounds, And I'm just like, man, this thing had to be massive, just huge. And the tree, the impressions go around this tree about 12 or 15 feet behind it. It's a big, old growth, Douglas fir, probably 3.5, 4 feet in diameter. And we follow the impressions around it. And on the other side is a fallen tree. And on the fallen tree is a big pile of picked mushrooms and a big tree leaf, like maybe a maple leaf or something. I don't know what exactly kind of leaf it was, but it was this really big leaf. And then the leaf, like a plate, there was a handful of snails and slugs. And so I'm just like, man, I've seen enough. I want to get out of here. My buddy goes, well, look at the impressions. They walk off back into the woods. And he goes, I want to follow them. And I said, no, man, you're crazy. I said, I don't want to do it, And so I stepped back out on the skid road, and now we're about 50 feet apart. And now I got the rifle, but yet I'm alone. I'm like completely freaked out, and I can see him. And as we walk, sometimes I can see him. Other times there's trees and brush in the way. I can't see him. So I'm saying, hey, Doug, you need to talk to me and tell me you're okay. And he's like, yeah, I'm all right. So we walk about 100 feet. With each step, he's getting further and further in from me. And then immediately off to my left in the brush, just maybe 30 yards in, I'm hearing all this snapping and popping and breaking and branches being broken. And then where he's at, I hear the same thing. And he comes running out, as fast as he can out of there. And he goes, man, let's get out of here. There's something in here. He's pissed. And I said, yeah, there's something over here, too. It's pissed off. So we walked out of there real slow. And I walked out, backwards, with my rifle looking down the skid road as we walked out. And when we got back up to the boulders to leave, I've only told a few people this, and I have only said it in one previous interview, but I know this was the wrong thing to do, but I did it. I was so filled with fear, adrenaline, and anger that I fired off the entire magazine back into the woods where all that crashing and breaking was going. 40 rounds. I was just so filled with fear and anger. and adrenaline. I know it was the wrong thing to do, but I did it. And I don't think I didn't hit anything, obviously, but except trees and stuff. But it was wrong. So then we threw our stuff in the truck and drive out of there, and we're driving out of there, and we're like high-fiving, like, man, I can't believe that. My buddy goes, man, I wish I could have seen it. He goes, I can't believe this. And I looked at him and I said, hey, you still want to overnight out here? He's like, no. And so got kind of quiet on the way home, and on the start of the way home, and I said, man, we got cell phones and I got a camera in my backpack. We need to go back. And I said, he goes, no, we're not ready for this. He goes, we'll come back, next week or another time. He goes, we'll get ready, we'll figure something out. So we went home, and he dropped me off at the house, and I'm bringing all my gear in, and my wife had some friends from church over, and she's like, what are you doing home? And I was like, oh, something happened, and so I told her and the other people from church there, and they were all kind of in disbelief, but they could see that I was like, kind of shaken, So I spent the next few days at home, had a hard time sleeping, and I was kind of rattled, and my wife was like, you want to go talk to some therapist or something? I said, no, I'm just in shock. I'm trying to wrap my mind about what happened.
So, Mark, did you reach out to any authorities?
Must have been on Wednesday. I picked up the phone and I called the ranger station responsible for that area. And the guy picks up the phone, and I said, I'm trying to bring up the subject of Bigfoot. And I was like, hey, I was out in this area out there. Are you guys responsible for that? And he goes, yeah, we go out there. That's our area. And I said, I saw something out there, and, I get into this big story, and the guy's laughing, giggling in the phone. And he goes, yeah. He goes, we get those calls from time to time. Ha, ha, ha. He goes, I've been here a long time. I've never seen anything. He's like, yeah. So I'll have a nice day. So he hangs up on me, and I was just like, well, whatever, So then I thought, man, what am I going to do now,
I'd say that's pretty typical, but it probably depends on who you get. Did you try anybody else?
I called the district headquarters for Washington Fish and Game, and the receptionist answers the phone, and so now I got to bring up the subject again, and so I'm telling her the story, and she goes, we get those calls from time to time, and she goes, throughout our whole area, and she goes, we don't really investigate that kind of stuff, but she goes, we have a retired fish and game veterinarian who has seen them in the field and knows quite a bit about them, and he's now retired, and now it's his hobby. So can I give him your name and number? And I said, yeah, have him call me. So he called me on Friday, and I told him the story, and I told him exactly where it happened at. And he goes, yeah. He goes, I've been out in that area. And he goes, I've hung cameras out, not in that same spot, but the general vicinity. And he goes, I've never gotten anything. He goes, I'm amazed that you saw that. And I go, yeah. He goes, I said, I'm still freaked out about it. And so he says, can I go out there with you? So we agreed to meet up the following morning on Saturday, and me and my buddy took him out there, and we thought, man, on the way out there, well, how are we going to do this, And I said, well, maybe people end up in that same spot a couple times a year, and it gets curious, and it comes and watches people. So let's just go back there and cook breakfast and do the same thing. So we go to the same spot, and we're on the tailgate cooking breakfast, and we've been there maybe not even an hour, and I had to relieve myself. So I step over where those boulders were, and I step into the brush about a couple feet, and the brush is real thick, and I'm standing there relieving myself, and I hear in front of me this deep, guttering, soft-toned growl, and it's like, and I can hear this heavy breathing, and I'm like, I can't see it, but, I can tell it's maybe, 10 to 15 feet in front of me, and I'm just like freaking out, and I zip up, and I come walking, really fast over to the truck, and at that point, the wildlife veterinarian was over near a creek about 70 feet away, and he's looking around the creek in the sand for prints, and my buddy's cooking, and I go, hey, man, I said, go over there and stand where I was just at and act like you're relieving yourself. And he goes, why? And I said, just go do it. So he goes over there, and he's standing there, and he looks back at me like with this weird look on his face, and he comes running back over, and he goes, man, there's something over there growling. I said, yeah, I know, man. I said, it's over here watching us. I said, it's, it's not in the same spot. It's in a different spot. I said, it's watching us. So the veterinarian came back over, and I didn't want to suggest anything to him while he was out there. I was going to bring him out there and just show him where this happened at. But I wanted him to find something on his own. I didn't want to suggest anything to him. So I took him down there where it was, and I showed him where it was standing, and he's like in amazement to how tall it had to be. And I was showing him the impressions are now, and the moss have lifted up, they're gone. And I showed him where the mushrooms and slugs and snails were, and so he walked back through where the prints, where the impressions go, and Doug, my buddy Doug, had to show him because he was the one that followed him. We walked back in there. We get back a couple 100 feet, and the veterinarian was off to my right, about just over 100 feet away, and my buddy was to my left. And he goes, now we're at this point, we're probably 250 feet from the truck, not quite a football field away. We can't see it because of the trees and brush. And he goes, come here. And I was like, what? And he goes, just be real quiet. He goes, you know, don't just listen. So we stand there listening. We're back towards that brush where the truck was. We hear this strange, like, talking, and it wasn't like whispering, but it was talking soft, almost like it wanted us to hear it, but it didn't want us to hear it too clearly. And it was this like real raspy voice, and it was talking really fast, like trying to form words. And it was.
Can you imitate what you were hearing?
I can kind of imitate it, but it kind of went like. It was just like, you know, I went on the internet and found out, you know, it's like they call it samurai chatter or something, you know, and that's kind of what it sounded like. It was really strange.
Yeah, that's really interesting you say that. By the way, out on SasquatchSyndicate.com under audio evidence, there's an ex-retired Navy cryptolinguist. His name's R. Scott Nelson. He's done a lot in terms of research on the Sasquatch language. He's taken a lot of old audio clips and actually has come to the conclusion that there is a kind of a formed language that these creatures are making. So after you heard all this, what do you guys do next?
We spent the rest of the day out there, another 3 or 4 hours, and walked around quite a bit, hiked, and nothing else happened, so we went to the truck and left. And we split up from the veterinarian and his pickup, and, you know, said, hey, keep in touch. I said, yeah, I'll let you know, in the future if we find anything. And we've collaborated quite a bit, and we've overnighted out there before in collaboration. And I just talked to him earlier on the phone today, and told him what happened last night when we were out there. But so, you know, we were like at work that week. We were like, you know, what are we going to do next? You know, and I was like, well, let's go. We got to get some kind of video and audio equipment. You know, we're like total beginners in this. Don't even know where to start. You know, I know on the internet people are hanging game cameras, and I kind of thought in my own thought that game cameras really wouldn't work because that's like their living room. You know, they live there. They know every little nuance of their territory. So it'd be like me coming over to someone's house and hanging a game camera in their living room. They're going to see it right away. And so I thought, let's not take that route. Let's just try some, you know, some different tactics and different things just to see what might work and what might not work. So I thought, I'll just go buy a Sony Handycam, kind with a screen flips out on the side, a video camera. And I said, I got a tripod. We'll just go and set it where I was standing and see if we can get something on video. So the following week, we go there and we did the same thing. I put the camera on the tripod where we were standing and hit record, and we stood around and talked for about 25, 30 minutes. And the camera would record for 10 minutes and save the video and then start a new one. So every 10 minutes you get a new video. So we walked away and we came back about 3 hours later from hiking, and the camera's there. It's not smashed or tipped over, and the battery's now worn out. So we thought, okay, you know, let's go home and download the video and watch it. So we go home, and you can hear us talking, and then we leave, and then maybe, you know, not even less than 10 minutes after we left, you hear these squirrels, you know, I don't know if they do this in all parts of the country, but you go walking through the woods and squirrels come out and start chirping. And so you hear these squirrels just start chirping, and then they're going ballistic and just, you know, chirping. Then you hear this crashing. It sounds like it's coming from the left of the camera. You hear this snapping of branches and breaking, and then you can see some branches that were above the camera just in front of it kind of shaking a little bit. And then you hear this kind of walking on gravel behind the camera, and then above the camera you hear a tree snap, just a larger break. It's all crack. And, well, first, before that, it did that. There was a tap on the camera, and the camera shook. So you get something tapped the camera, and the camera started to shake. And so about 2 minutes after that, you hear the large tree branch break. It's all crack. And then about 30 seconds later, behind the camera, what sounds like it's directly behind the camera, you hear a smaller break, like it was breaking a smaller branch off the bigger branch. And then you see a branch wave in front of the camera, like as if something was, trying to see if, what's in the distance in the forest is on the screen flipped out. So if I shake this branch in front of this thing, is it going to appear on the screen? And that's what happened. The branch, shakes in front of this lens, and me and my buddy are watching this, and we're looking at each other like, what the heck is that? I mean.
So did you get an idea of like how high on the tree this was actually happening?
Those branches above the camera are like 8 feet off the ground. I mean, who's going to be able to reach them, And, if it was a squatch that did that, me and my buddy were sitting there looking at each other like, this thing probably was curious when we got there. It came up to listen to us, and then we set this thing with 3 legs out, and then we put this black thing on top of it, and it's got this lighted screen on it, and it probably came up, it was curious, and saw it, and it got curious about what it was, but it's like, how come it didn't step in front of the camera? I mean, is there, like, light coming out from the lens, Does the light look like an eyeball or something,
Yeah, I'm not really sure, but I have heard that, some of the electronics, as the sensor comes on, where the batteries kind of kick up for the keep alive for the motors that run the cameras, etc., that there's a frequency that it emits. So maybe it's similar to a dog whistle or, like a hummingbird ringer that teenagers use. As an adult, we may not hear it, but it doesn't mean that animals can't hear it.
If it was a Bigfoot, it really exposed itself. Like, it's like the truck is like 50 feet away in the cul-de-sac. I mean, if there was a camera in the truck, we could have had something really good, So we're like doing this trial and error thing, And so I thought, well, let's get another one of these cameras, and let's hide a camera in the truck and try the same thing. So we came back the following week, did the exact same thing, and except this time we hid a camera in the truck. We put it on a tripod on its center console, and we put the camera over by the rocks, and we came back to the truck and put the one up on the center console, and we went over there and talked, and then we left. And we're still on camera walking away, and you can hear rocks hitting the truck. We parked the truck under an area where there was nothing above it. There was nothing falling from the trees on top of the truck. It wasn't raining. It was a nice sunny day. And so, we're like, wow, what's going on? This is after we got back to watch the video. But on the video, you could see after we left, rocks fly from the left, hit the door under the driver's side window, and ricochet off. And then you can hear rocks hitting the truck. And I think on that video, you can actually see 2 or 3 rocks hit the truck. But at one point, you can hear a rock hit his front windshield pretty hard. And when we got back to the truck, the front windshield had a rock hit on it. It was spider-webbed across. When we walked back up the truck, there was a Subaru sitting there, brand new Subaru. And there was an elderly gentleman and a younger gentleman kind of up on this other road that went out of the cul-de-sac, and it dead ends up there. And they were standing up there, and they were pointing back into the woods and talking. And we both had shotguns, and we both had sidearms. And the elderly gentleman, they both turn around. The elder gentleman sees us, and we walk past, and he gets looks like he was kind of intimidated we had guns, so he went and sat back down in the car. So we put our guns in the bed of the pickup truck, and the younger guy, looked like it maybe his grandson, he's probably in his mid-20s, comes walking down, and I go, hey, how you doing? He goes, hey, pretty good. How's it going? I said, hey, you guys were up there looking back into the woods, and I said, I saw you pointing. What was going on? He goes, well, I don't know if I really want to tell you. I said, well, what happened? He goes, well, when we pulled up and we came across that bridge, he goes, we noticed something crouched next to the passenger side door of the pickup truck. My buddy has this 2002 Dodge Ram 4x4, and it's not lifted. It's just got the factory lift on it, but it's still pretty tall. So he goes, it hurt us, and it stood up and turned around, and it took off up this hill. He goes, but when it stood up, he goes, it was massive. He goes, the shoulders were taller than the cab of the truck. And he goes, it took off up this hill and ran into the woods here. And he goes, I go, how long ago did that happen? He goes, maybe 5 minutes before you got here.
Yeah, I can imagine that freaked you out.
I was like, oh man, this is, so I said, hey, can I have your name and number? And he goes, no, I don't want to get involved. I said, he goes, I've seen enough. He goes, we want to leave. So they got in their car and left. And so me and my friend were like, wow, this is amazing. maybe we're going to get something on video. So like I said, you know, we get home and download the video, and sure enough, you know, I told you there was rocks flying out and his windshield was broken, and then in the video we could hear like this clacking noise. Like, it wasn't metallic, it wasn't glass, it wasn't rocks, but it was a strange noise, and it sounded like it was coming from the passenger side of the truck, and we couldn't figure out what it was. And I had my wife listen to the noise, and she goes, well, it kind of sounds like the door handle on the pickup, like when you lift the door handle and you release it, it kind of slaps back, clack, clack, you know. So he set the camera up in his pickup in my driveway, and we did the same thing and listened to it, and it's the same noise. So this thing was trying to get into the truck, you know. And I've heard that people have encountered that, where they come back and their vehicle's been rifled through, or their car's been rifled through, and or some people have actually heard an interview, a report of an elderly couple that came back to their vehicle at a trail, and they actually left the back door open on their car, and there was actually a juvenile squatch in the back seat that had jumped out and took off. So I thought, you know, they probably watch humans and imitate them. So this thing was probably hiding in the brush, watching us get in and out of the truck, and maybe wanted to get in. Or I put apples on the other side of the road by the other camera. Maybe it wanted to disable the camera in the truck. Maybe it knew what it was, which I don't know how it could, but maybe it wanted those apples. So now we're kind of like, you know, perplexed, like, you know, now what are we going to do, you know? And so we did a lot more research in that same spot. And one time we went there, and we got there in the early morning before it was light, and we pulled up where we usually park and shut the engine off. And I said, hey, I don't want to get out until the sun comes up. So we sat there for about 45 minutes, and you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. It was that dark. And so the sun was just barely starting to come up. My buddy goes, hey, I'm going to open the door. And as soon as he opens the door and the dome light comes on, maybe just inside the tree line, maybe, you know, 50 to 100 feet in, you hear this loud whoop. You know, I mean, it happened as soon as the dome light came on. So obviously, you know, they're still in the area. So we're like, yeah, you know, this is going to be great. So one time we went out there in that same location, and we took a Walmart bucket, and I painted it green, and I put a bag of apples in it and some Snickers bars, and we took some paracord. We went out there and hung it about 8 feet off the ground, and I tied a bowline knot, navy bowline knot around the handle, and then over the branch, and then down another tree, tied another navy bowline knot. So the harder you pull, the tighter the knot gets. It has to be ripped down. So we left, and we came back the following morning, and we walked where the bucket is, and the bucket's gone. And we're looking at the paracord, and it's been untied. It wasn't torn down or ripped. The branch wasn't broken. It was untied. So, and then we look around for the bucket, and we found it about 100 feet away. It was empty. So we thought that was kind of interesting. And you know, if it was a bear or something, it would have had to, you know, rip the bucket off the paracord, or, you know, break the branch or something. But so that was kind of interesting. And then there was a big windstorm out there just after last Thanksgiving, and so we went out there and get to the first down tree, and we're kind of bummed. My buddy carries a chainsaw in his pickup truck, and we cut through it. It took us probably, you know, 2 or 3 hours, and cut through the first tree. And we go around the corner, another tree. We look at distance, just tree after tree after tree, and we're talking. Some of these trees are massive Douglas, old growth Douglas firs, you know, 3.5, 4 feet in diameter. And so some of them are stacked 2 and 3 feet, 2 and 3 high across the road. So we hiked back through there, and it took us 2 to 3 hours to go a half a mile to our research area. And it was like, man, this sucks. I mean, we were so tired we couldn't even, you know, we had to turn around and go back. And I told my buddy, I was like, it's over, man. I said, you know, we can't get back here. They're not going to come back here and clean this up till next summer or something. Or even if they do that, they might not even do it. I said, it's over, you know. I said, I don't know what to do now. And so we thought, well, let's start at the first down tree as far as we can get with, you know, we'll camp there. So we came, we took December. We didn't go out there for the rest of December, and we went out there in January, and we thought, well, let's overnight right here and sleep in your truck. And so I thought, yeah, let's do that. So we get out there, and we'd been up all night Friday night, and all day Saturday, and it was like 5 o'clock. I was pretty beat, and we had already cooked dinner, and I took a bucket and put apples in it, Snickers bars, and I put an audio recorder in the bucket, and I put it in the bed of the pickup truck. I was sleeping in the back seat of his Dodge. He was in the front. And I put it directly behind the back window on the driver's side. And so I crashed out, and then he crashed out about an hour later, and I had my head against the driver's side rear door with a pillow. My head and shoulders are against it. And I woke up maybe about 10:30, and I could hear these, like, drumming of sticks, you know, kind of, you know, clink, 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 and then at a distance you'd hear a reply, you know, like if you had a kid with sticks or drumsticks and you were beating on something, you know, and they were like communicating back and forth, and then I could hear some branches popping and breaking right outside the door. And then it got real quiet, and I thought I could hear something walk up to the truck, and my buddy snored away, and I could feel my head and shoulders that were leaning against the door panel being slightly pushed on. And so I was like, oh my God, it's right here at the door. It's like pushing with his body on the truck. I woke my buddy up. I said, Doug, it's right out here outside the door. I go, man, I want to leave. And he's like, no, man, this is what we're here for. So
what kind of noise are you hearing?
I hear like this hand slap on the glass on the driver's side door and the rear door, like a hand hit the glass. But we'd already been in there almost 6 hours at that point, so the windows are fogged up. And we can't see out and it can't see in. And so I hear this, I could hear it. My buddy falls back asleep and he's snoring away, and I could hear it kind of like sound like it was walking around the truck. And then it comes back to my side over behind the window, and I could hear, he has a plastic bed liner in his truck. I could hear the bucket kind of being pushed around on the bed liner, and it would stop, and then it'd be pushed around, and then it would stop. And I thought, oh man, it's eating the stuff in the bucket. This is, you know, I'm going to get some great audio here, you know. And that went on for 45 minutes to an hour, and then it ended, and then it got quiet, and I laid there till about 2 in the morning thinking, you know, I'm freaking out of my mind, and I'm thinking, oh, the assault's going to come, man. They're going to roll the truck over, bust the windows out, and kill us. But I fell asleep and woke up about 7 in the morning and got out of the truck, and I walked to the back, and the bucket is now on the tailgate, and it's empty. But the audio recorder's gone. I can't find the audio recorder anywhere, you know. And we looked around for it, couldn't find it. And then we looked at the driver's side door window and the rear window, and there's these big hand and fingerprints on the glass.
And for our listeners, Mark was kind enough to share those. So if you don't mind, Mark, I'd like to put those up under this episode.
Yeah, and so that was kind of weird. You know, we were like, oh, man, this is like really, really strange, you know. And I told my buddy, I said, you know, we should like take your truck to the local sheriff's department and see if we can talk them into taking these prints, you know. And he's like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want anybody to know what's going on out here. I don't want nobody knowing anything. So I was like, yeah, okay, you're right, you know. We cooked breakfast on the bed of the pickup truck, and let me backtrack. Back when we were in the old research area, one time we were walking down a game trail, and I was in the lead. My buddy was behind me, and we kept hearing this. Something was like shadowing us in the woods next to us, like walking next to us. We would walk. We'd hear stuff being stepped on and broken, and branches being broken, and we would stop, and then it would stop. And so my buddy was like, okay, something's in the tree line. Let's take 5 steps. So we'd take 5 steps, and you would hear it, and then we would stop, and then it would take like another step. Then we played this game with it. We did about 4 or 5 more times, and let's take 3 steps, you know. And then after we did that, we thought, okay, we're pretty sure that something's there following us. We just continued on, and we got maybe another 100 yards, and my buddy starts screaming, oh, my God, what is that? And I turn around, and I see what looks like this. I must have saw the back of its thigh or its calf. It, like, stepped into the woods, and I go, what happened? He goes, I don't know. I got this weird feeling, and I turned around. And I said, it crossed the path behind us, about 100 yards behind us, and I thought, oh, my God. I said, we're making a huge mistake here. I said, we're walking around with just this handy camera on our neck and waiting for something to happen, and then we got to turn it on and record something. I said, we need to have cameras on our back rolling you know, the whole time we're out here, and maybe cameras on our head rolling the entire time we're out here. So,
yeah, I'd have to agree with you, and we've recommended a couple times on the show, just attach GoPros when you go out if you're going to be out there. Unfortunately, a lot of times you could just get startled by one of these creatures, and the last thing you're going to do is reach in your pocket for your cell phone, enter your password, push the camera button, and get it, because by then it's just a glimpse and it's probably going to disappear. So you don't get a lot of chance to look at it. You've got limited time on your hands. You're trying to figure out what you're seeing. So if you're going to go out and do research, go pick up some GoPros.
that's what we started doing, was carrying cameras on our head and our back. So that morning after I'll go back, fast forward again. After that morning, after the incident at the truck, we cooked breakfast, and we had cameras, and I put my backpack on, and my buddy turns my camera on and on my backpack, and we start walking away from the truck. And we had left the doors open on the truck, and we had cameras hidden inside because we thought, well, they tried to get in the truck before. Let's just leave the doors open with these cameras in here running. Maybe they'll just rifle through the truck and we can get them on video. And so we walk away from the truck, and just off to the left of the truck, there's two big trees and another tree behind it. And as you're walking away, we didn't know it was there. I caught it later on when we watched the video at home. There was one hiding behind the tree. It was probably the one from the previous night, and it was listening to us, because you couldn't see the back of the truck from behind that tree. You could only hear. So it didn't know we were walking away. So as we're walking away, you see it on camera, then you see it turn its head to the right and sees us, and then it ducks down out of sight. So I watched that video probably 100 times, and I put it into a program and broke it down frame by frame. And it's not a spectacular video. It's on a thumb camera about the size of your thumb. It's made by Viho, and it's called a Movie Pro, and it's only 2 megapixels. So I thought, oh man, we need to get some better cameras. So now we got GoPros on our back. So we walk away from the truck, and we walk about a couple hundred yards, and we go around a slight bend in the road. And I thought, man, I didn't turn my head camera on. So as soon as I turned it on, from back behind us where the truck was, you heard these loud tree knocks, like 6 or 7 of them. Donk, donk, donk. And I turned and I looked back towards where the truck comes from, and I'm just like, wow, they must be signaling to others further down the road that we're on our way or something, So, and we didn't know at that point that the one had been behind the truck until later we watched the video. But so we continue on, and my buddy goes, hey, I need to relieve myself. So he's standing behind me, 20 feet, and I'm just with my camera on. I'm just standing there looking into the woods, and out of the corner of my eye, I see this rock come flying. And I didn't catch the rock on camera, but I caught the sound of it hitting the ground next to me. It's this loud clack, and I turned to my buddy, he's turning and he's zipping up, and I said, man, did you kick a rock at me? And he goes, what? I said, a rock just got thrown at me from up on this hillside up here. And we're like, man, that's a good sign, I said, first all the activity at the truck, and now this, So, yeah, that was that trip out. And then, so this another trip out, we're walking around out there, and now we had the GoPro cameras on our back, and we walked down this long stretch of road with a slight grade, and in the distance behind us, you see what looks like a really small something crawl down from this steep hillside, and then it's in the ditch on the right side of the road, and then it crawls up to the side of the road, and then it stands up on 2 feet, and then it casts a shadow on the road. The sun's behind it. And we watched the video of that, and we were like, man, is that a juvenile, And I said, yeah, I told him, I said, I know that area. Let's go back there. So the next trip out, we went back there, and it's this steep hillside with a cliff up there, but you go up the cliff about 40 feet, and then it flattens out, and it's solid rock up there. I said, that's if this was like a military combat situation, and I was, on the offensive trying to defend this road, I said, that's where I would be at. It's a perfect lookout point. I said, maybe there's some up there, I said, so I took some of these small cameras that we used to carry on our backs, and I camouflaged them with paint, and then we went out there, and I would get out of the truck real quick and clip some on some tree branches up and down the road and throw some apples out into the woods, and we would drive off and then come back 3 hours later and get the cameras, and we'd go home and download them and listen to them, and we would hear tree breaking and rock clacking on the videos, and I said, let's go do it again. So we did it again, the next week, same thing. And we did that 4 or 5 times. And I said, dude, they're habituating that spot right there. They got to be up on that hillside, you know. So then I thought, man, I want to get somebody who knows a lot about these things to come out here and kind of validate this. So I made a bunch of phone calls, and I got a researcher from Canada to come down. I don't want to mention his name, but I'm sure everybody knows who he is. And he came down, and he agreed to spend 2 days with me out there. And so we did that. You know, I said, hey, I can't get to the original sighting area, but we can go. You know, I showed him the stuff I had on my laptop, the video of the one behind the tree, and we found we had a bunch of footprints. I think at that point we had like 8 footprints at that point. And he's like, man, you got some really good stuff. I said, yeah. So took him out there, and the first day we did that. We hung the camera there, and then we went up to our park and walked around and came back later and got the camera. And we agreed to meet for breakfast the following morning. And when I met him for breakfast, I brought my laptop, and I said, hey, you know, here's the camera we hung there. I said, listen. And I had him put on the headphones, and he's listening. You could hear all this rock clacking and some tree breaking. And I said, that's not all. I said, when we're out walking around, I said, I put a camera up on the dash inside the truck. I said, look at these rocks. You could see rocks flying from the woods and hitting the truck. And he's like, wow, you know, that's, you know, I said, yeah, he goes, that's not proof. And I said, no, it's not proof. There's nobody out there except us. You know, I said, rocks don't fly out of the woods on their own and hit things, you know. He goes, yeah, you know, I agree. So his wife came on the next day, and I think at one point we had a rock thrown at us, and he had a parabolic ear on, and I saw the rock, but he was in front of me about 20 feet, but he heard the rock on his parabolic ear hit the ground, and he turned around. What was that? And I said, oh, that just threw a rock at us. And it was in the same spot where we'd been hanging those small thumb cameras and getting the rock clacking and tree breaking. So at the end of the day, you know, I took him back to him and his wife to his vehicle, and he said, he goes, man, this is a real interesting area. He goes, I want to come back another day and spend more time with you. He goes, but he goes, here's this spot watcher game camera. He goes, can you hang it up here somewhere out here for me? And I said, you know, I don't really think game cameras are going to work. He goes, well, you never know. You might get lucky. I said, okay, I'll hang the camera up for you somewhere. And he goes, yeah, I like that. I said, okay. So I spent that was at the end of April. I think it was like the 29th or 30th of April he gave that to me. So I spent the next few weeks, called my friend and my coworker, and I saw him at work. And I said, hey, you know, I'm going to go hang this camera for this guy. And he goes, I can't. I'm busy. So then I called some other people I knew. They were all busy, and my wife said she would go. And I said, no. I said, I'm not going to put you in harm's way. I said, no. I said, I thought, well, I'll just go out there on a Monday. This was on a Sunday. I thought to myself, I'll go out there tomorrow morning. It was May 16th. I thought, I won't, you know, I'll just do it real quick, but I won't, you know, bring any other stuff with me. So I know they have a lookout up on top of those rocks up there that watch the road because of all the activity we've been getting. I said, I'll just park the truck back a half a mile or a mile, and I'll just walk in real quietly and slowly, and I'll walk back in there about 100 feet off the road and hang this camera. So,
were you nervous going in, and what do you have on you?
So I had my backpack, I had a ball of water, I had his game camera, I had some paracord, and I had a 44 mag on my hip. I had no video and audio equipment with me because I wasn't doing any research. I just was just going to hang that camera and leave. So I got out there. It must have been 6:30, 7 in the morning, and I walked in really slowly. I took like 45 minutes to walk in on this road. I didn't want them to hear me. And so I get to the spot where I've been clipping those little cameras at, leaving apples and Snickers bars. I started to step in off the road, and I had to step in what I thought was a ditch because I think it was full. It was just a body of water, but now it's empty. It was just a puddle of water, but I had to jump over that. And then once again, the forest floor is really thick with moss and brush, and it's hard to walk. So I'm looking down, walking in, not really looking out in front of me. I'm trying not to fall, and I ended up walking in maybe what I thought was originally about 30 feet, but I've been back and have measured it. It was just over 20 feet. I see in front of me, out of my vision, I see something really dark, and it moves, and I look up. And yeah, I still have nightmares over what happened. But I look up and this juvenile, what I think is a juvenile Sasquatch, maybe an older juvenile, it's about 6'3", steps out from a tree on the left, and then to the right, a smaller juvenile, about 5.5 feet tall, steps out from the tree on the right. And I'm thinking, I'm dead. I thought, I'm dead. I mean, I'm within 12 to 15 feet from him, probably, you know. And I thought, what do I do? And this whole encounter maybe lasted 30 seconds. I'm just like, running through my mind, what am I going to do? So I'm standing there looking at him, and I look back at the smaller one for about 3 seconds, and I realized that one's not a threat.
So what made you think that?
He's maybe about 5'5", looked like a teenager, maybe about 170 pounds. And I thought, that one's not a threat. This one is. And this one was looked identical to the smaller one. It had all black hair, short hair, but it wasn't have mass yet. It was maybe 220, 230 pounds, and it was super lean and muscular. It looked like about the same cut as an NFL receiver or NBA basketball player. Well, it didn't have mass yet, bulk yet, but it was solid muscle. And the hair was real thin and black on it, and the head was the same shape as the other one. It didn't roll back like a human. It came and slanted back up. But on this one, the skin on the face was, like I said, the first one I saw, the skin was a brownish color. These were the skin around the nose and the mouth, and some of the eyes was a grayish color. And the eyes were black, had a thick brow. The nose was the same thing. It was real wide and flat on the face. The lips were further below the bottom of the nose than the human. And you could actually kind of see the neck on this one because it didn't have bulkiness yet, but it was solid muscle. So I get a good look at it, and its fingernails on its hands, one thing that really shocked me when I looked at it, its fingernails were yellow, like it had nail fungus or something, and which I thought was kind of odd. They were like really this kind of orangish yellow looking color. And so I thought, okay, so I took a step back. So it takes a small step towards me, and immediately the smaller one takes some real quick steps and gets behind the bigger one. And I thought, I'm going to try and back out of here, but I don't know if it's going to let me. I thought, I'm just going to rip me apart. So I take another step back. This time it takes another step towards me, but it didn't lower its jaw, but it opened its lips, and it gave me, I see its teeth, and its teeth are human-like. They're flat, they're not canine, they're flat, look like human teeth, but they're yellow and brownish, kind of dirty, and it gives me this growl. It's like, so as soon as I heard the growl, I turned to run. I'm a disabled vet, so I kind of run and walk with a limp, and I'm trying to run out of here, and I can't really run. I'm trying to jump over stuff and climb over, trying to make it to the edge of the woods, and within one shot, this thing is right on my heels, and it could have had me within one step. It could have took me down and ripped me apart, and so I could feel it right behind me. So as soon as I get to the edge of the road, when my foot hits the gravel, I had a backpack on. I got hit right between my shoulder blades, just below my neck, and I went head over heels, and I don't know if it was a fist, a palm of a hand, or a forearm. I imagine it was probably a fist or a palm, but I went head over heels, and I landed on the other, it's a single-lane gravel road. I landed on the other side, and I kind of landed on my left side, but I had a backpack on, and I was trying to, I could tell out of the corner of my eye, it was kind of over my right shoulder to my right behind me, so I'm trying to roll to my right. And I had my 44 on my right hip. I undid the snap and start to draw my 44 out, and I see it walk past my right shoulder, and it starts to walk away from me across the road. And as it walks away from me across the road, I'm looking at the back of its calves, and there's just solid muscle, and the back of its thighs is solid muscle, and then its buttocks was all covered with feces, and I couldn't smell anything on it. It didn't smell that odor people talk about.
So as you get a look of it, the physique of it, what else did you notice?
Its back was V-shaped, like a real, cut athlete, and its triceps, and it was just massive, just solid muscle. And I thought, man, I could drop six rounds in its back right now and drop it, but then what am I going to do? I said I'd be shooting it in the back. It doesn't, this all running through my mind really fast, and I'm trembling, so I put the 44 back in my holster, and I snap it, and I get up, and I make a jogging limp back to my pickup truck. And the whole way back, it's the most terrifying run back, run in my life. I'm thinking they're gonna come after me, they're gonna kill me, but I made it all the way to my truck and got out of there. And so it's about 45-minute drive to cell phone connection. So I called my buddy up and told him what happened, and he was just like, man, you went out there alone? I said, yeah. And I told him, I said, I'm done, dude. I said, I'm not going out there anymore. I said, I had enough. I didn't quit, but for like a week after that, I thought I'm done. I'm not going to do it anymore. So I still have nightmares over it today. I mean, the first time we went back to that same spot, it was hard for me. I wouldn't even get out of the pickup truck, but so that was kind of tough. But
so, Mark, I know you've been out there a lot, and thanks for sharing all those stories. Just a question, kind of going back to the beginning. I'm sure we'll get some naysayers out there that say, well, he had a gun, why didn't he shoot it? Or he had a cell phone, why didn't he pull it out, use his fingerprint recognition, or enter the passcode, click up his camera, and take a picture of one of these things? And I always kind of get a kick out of that, but I was just kind of wondering if you could share your perspective as well about what's going through your mind during one of these encounters.
You're in shock. I mean, your body just kind of, everything happens so fast, but yet it's in slow motion too. And so when it took off and I thought it was going to come after us, my first fear was, it's going to kill us. So, I thought I didn't have time to get into my backpack and grab the 44 or my cell phone or the camera. The first thing I saw was that AR-15 laying on the floor of the back seat. And, and I threw the magazine in it and pulled the charging handle and put the safety off. That was my first line of defense to defend me and my buddy,
The other thing I also find interesting is, somebody says, oh, yeah, make a decision. Well, when you are startled, it's kind of hard to get your mind to grasp kind of what you're looking at and really comprehend the situation. Can you just describe, like, how much time did it take for you to really understand, hey, I'm not looking at a raccoon, I'm not looking at a bear? What was that like?
Well, when it first appeared out of that tree and it leaned out further and I could see the hair and the full face, the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, I knew it wasn't a human just by the way it looked, but at that point I really wasn't sure what it was until it ducked back and then reappeared, but it had came closer and kind of in the light a little bit, or right in front of the and came up into the opening. Then I knew exactly what I was looking at. There's no way it could have been a human. Just it had human-like characteristics, but there's just, you'd have to be kind of this Neanderthal-looking human, a deformed face.
So, Mark, you mentioned a couple times, the face was just a little bit off from being human. Can you kind of describe what you mean?
The distance between the bottom of the nose and the top of the lip, and the way the lips were formed, and its nose and its Frankenstein brow, and the shape of the top of its head, like it didn't roll back like a human. It came back and slanted back and upward, and the silver hair on top. I described it to some guys that have a lot of experience, and even the guy from Canada, and he says, you had a probably real rare sighting of a very old, dominant male granddaddy that, can get up to 10 feet tall. And he goes, you should feel privileged. And I said, well, I kind of feel privileged. I said, it's kind of your worst nightmare in the same token, for somebody who really, I never really even gave it any thought to have it just tossed in my face like that. It's still shocking to even think about it today. I still have nightmares over everything, but yet I've become obsessed with the whole subject too, and we've kind of taken a different approach to what we've been doing. We don't go out there and do Bigfoot calls or do rock tapping or tree knocking. We go out there and we act like our best stuff has come when we just act like hikers or campers.
Mark, you had also mentioned on several of your encounters you hadn't smelled anything. Has that always been the case?
I went out there, it was the weekend of, I think, July 15th and 16th. The retired wildlife veterinarian, he goes out there and hangs cameras with his friend, but his friend couldn't make it. And he said, you want to go out there with me and overnight, and we'll hang some game cameras just for overnight. And then he goes, in one area where you had some encounters. And I said, yeah. So I thought, I said, I don't think game cameras work. He goes, yeah, I know, but he goes, I don't want to go alone. So I said, okay. So we went out there and hung game cameras but in an area where me and my buddy overnighted, and our camp was overrun in the middle of the night. But we hung cameras in that area, and I said, I won't sleep here, dude. I won't camp here after what happened. I said, let's go camp at a campground. So we went to this campground. It's not an official campground by the Forest Service where you have to rent. kind of a campground. It's just a clearing, and every now and then you see people in there with tents. And we camped at one end, and about 125 yards away there was some other campers at the other end. And I had been up all night, Friday night working, and I had been up all day Saturday with him, and it was like 8 o'clock at night. And I told him, I said, listen, man, I said, I got to go to sleep. I've been up for like 30 hours. And so he goes, well, I want to make a fire. He goes, I'm going to sit around the fire for a while. So I crashed out about 8 o'clock, and I woke up about maybe 1:30 or 1:45 in the morning, and he was in his tent asleep. And laid there for a little while, and I thought I could hear something walking outside my tent. And I wasn't sure, and I could hear it walking around my tent, and then it walked around my tent again, and then I could hear these steps, not real loud, but I could hear movement, and then I smelled this smell that I can't explain it. I mean, it's one of the worst smells I've ever encountered. It was like made my eyes water. It smelled like rotten meat and feces. I mean, it was overwhelming, and this lingered around my tent, and this thing walked around my tent for probably 10 or 15 minutes. And so at that point, I'm on alert. It's like just after 2 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't, so I turned had a light in my tent. I turned the light on and left it on all night, and I just laid in there listening. I didn't hear anything the rest of the night. So I don't know if that was a Sasquatch that was walking around my tent, and something else smelled, but something was walking around my tent, and the smell was really overwhelming. I mean, it was like the worst thing I've ever smelled. It was like rotten meat and feces mixed together. And I've heard people describe that smell before as it kind of smells like that. But
So, Mark, as you've been out numerous times, as you've recorded sounds or have you heard these noises, had you done any further research on kind of what you were hearing out there?
I went to you guys were at the International Bigfoot Conference, and I met Ron, I think Moorhead is his name, I think.
Yeah, Ron's got some great work there on the Sierra Sounds.
First time I've met him, first time I ever really heard of him. I had heard his stuff before, but I didn't know who it was. I heard his recordings. And I told him, I said, hey, this is what happened. I said, this is what I heard, and I tried to imitate it for him. And he goes, I said, it sounded like language, I said, but it sounded like it was talking really fast. And the words, I was talking so fast it couldn't form words. And he goes, yeah, if you had a recording and slowed it down, it would actually be syllables. He goes, it is a language. And I said, yeah, it kind of makes sense, I said, I've heard it out there that initial time, and we've heard it out there several times before. And in fact, we just heard it last night.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about it. And earlier this week on social media, I posted under our blog some TV listings and some of our favorite episodes out there on Bigfoot and Sasquatch. And one of the episodes I didn't list, and I'm going to add that tonight, is Joe Rogan Questions Everything. And he has one specific episode on Bigfoot. There's two people on there, R. Scott Nelson, that did a great about 15 minutes on just the samurai chatter. And then also Barb Sheep from Barb and Gabby. She also was on that episode talking a little bit about the chattering. So, Mark, you've done a lot of research since your encounters, and certainly you've had some pretty traumatic events, it sounds like. Can you share, has that deterred you at all from, you doing further research?
Yeah, I got shoved down from behind, and I thought, well, I'm done with this. And I said, I just can't do it anymore. And that was on May 16th. Well, Memorial Weekend was coming up, and my buddy talked me into going out there. And I said, listen, I can't go all the way out there. I said, I'll go out there to a certain point just across this bridge. And I said, we'll camp there. We'll see if they're willing to come another mile down to the bridge and check us out. I said, but I'm not going back in there to that point anymore. I said, maybe later at another time when I'm over it. But I said, right now I just can't do it.
So, Mark, kind of going back to that day that you were pushed down, why do you think that they were so aggressive, and what really happened that day?
This is why I think it did that. Okay, I've been clipping cameras along that road on tree branches and leaving apples and Snickers bars, but I've never penetrated into the woods there. And I've always came back hours later and got the cameras, and sometimes the food is gone, and sometimes it's not. And I've never directly pointed the camera at the food because I have an idea they know what's going on. They kind of know what, they see something new. I know there's a lookout. I know they have what's called a sentry, and they're watching They have to be from, every time I go there and clip a camera, there's all these rock clacking and tree breaks. So they probably somehow heard me walking in, and they thought, oh, that guy's back here, and he's going to leave us some apples and Snickers bars. Let's hide over here, and when he takes off, we'll get him, Well, I happened to step in on them where they were is what happened. And I don't think they were there they probably didn't think I was going to step into the woods because I'd never walked in right there. But I did that day, and they had one of two choices, either, hide behind the tree and hope I don't see him or confront me. But see, what was really strange is when I turned to run, and I only got one step, he was already on me. I could feel him on my back, right behind me after one step. But he didn't hit me until I got to the edge of the road.
Yeah, almost like it was probably, toying with you or just showing you how fast it actually was. And it's interesting. I heard out at the International Bigfoot Conference a couple of researchers that came up talking about the speed of which they think that they travel, anywhere between, 30 and 40 miles an hour. And that's pretty quick compared to a human. So I can imagine it was on you pretty quick.
Yeah.
Mark, going back to one detail that you mentioned that I found really fascinating tonight, which was the actual fingernails. And in primates, and in humans too, we bite our nails. It's called onychophagia. But if you bite your nails, they're not going to be very uniform. You mentioned that they were kind of yellow. Could you tell, was the dirt or the fungus, was it underneath the fingernail? And then also, do you remember the shape of the fingernails? Did you get a good look at them?
They were kind of uniformly the same color. All of them were kind of this yellow, orangish. I don't want to say that it was nail fungus, but that's kind of how, if you see someone with their big toe and it has nail fungus on it, that's kind of what it looked like to me. That was just the first thing that came to mind, was that kind of look. And they weren't pointed. They were short, short fingernails. So maybe they do chew on them. But I did read somewhere where somebody said that their fingernails might get that color because of digging or something.
Right. So I was thinking about the dirt.
Yeah.
So, Mark, you had shared off the air just a little bit about your Memorial Day encounter. Can you take us, into that encounter in a little bit more detail? And how are you feeling when you got asked to go out there?
I told them, hey, I'll camp, away from there. And so we thought, okay, let's camp at this one spot on the other side of this bridge. But it had rained. This is on Memorial Weekend. It rained that week, and that area is heavily shaded. So we get there, and that spot's just muddy. And I said, I'm not going to camp here in the mud. And I said, I'm not camping further down in here. I said, let's just go down this other Forest Service road along the river. And I said, let's just try and get down on these sandbars and look for prints. And so we drove down the Forest Service road, and there was like this on the right, there was this like real primitive looking dirt road that's kind of overgrown. So we drove down it. My buddy has, a Dodge pickup that's kind of beat up. And so we're pushing through these tree branches. And we get to kind of this clearing, and there's this kind of primitive campsite with an old fire ring, and it looks like somebody's camped there before. And we get out, and we're looking around, and there's like this stack of old cordwood that looks like it's been there a long time, and there's a rusty, abandoned like Coleman stove and a lantern, and it looked like there was a tent that had like weathered, and it was kind of blown around and torn, and then there was like a little sleeping bag inside of it. And obviously somebody's camped there, but it's probably been a long time, and it looks like they left their stuff here, And so we thought, well, okay, let's just park the truck here. And it looked like there was kind of this old path that kind of wound through the woods, and it had a direct direction of the river. So we get our backpacks on, and at this point, we had already stopped carrying rifles and shotguns, because we found that we don't get very much luck with carrying a rifle or shotgun, because they probably have seen hunters out there, and they know what those big black sticks that go boom do. They shoot deer and elk and kill them. So we don't carry those anymore. We just carry a sidearm, and we just act like we put cameras on our heads and our backs, and we just act like hikers. So we walk back in on this trail, and it kind of winds back through the woods, zigzagging back and forth and up and down these berms, and it goes about 125 yards, and we end up on the banks of the river, and there's all these sandbars, and the river kind of splits off and forms these other channels of water, and there's these forested islands out there. So we go out there and walk on these sandbars, and we walk up across this body of water and up onto this island, and it's probably about 100 yards long and probably 50 yards wide, and it's forested. It's heavily forested with brush and everything. We walk up on there, and it's not as thick as the other woods, so you can walk through it, but we find these row of sticks, and they're about 6 feet apart, and they're about the diameter of a silver dollar, and they're shoved into the ground, and we pull the first one up, and it's like somebody broke a branch off, stripped all the smaller branches off of it, and shoved it in the ground. And then, 5, 6 feet away, there's another one, and there's like, I can't remember, there's like half a dozen of them in a row, in a line. And we pulled each one up and looked at it, and it was, not grown out of the ground. It was shoved in the ground. Some of them were shoved in like 5 or 6 inches, That's the first time we found anything like that. And I haven't really been able to find too much on the internet about that. That was really strange. So we walked on these sandbars, and we did find a print. It was kind of a weathered print, about 4 or 5 days old. And it looks like it's weathered a little bit, but it's pretty big. And so then we head back to the truck, and at that point it's like 5 o'clock, and I told them, I said, listen, I said, man, we've been up all night and up all day. I said, working and hiking. I said, let's just camp here. I said, I had enough, So we set up our tents, and we cooked, and we cooked steaks and baked beans. We had potato salad, and then we weren't going to start a fire because we weren't going to be up very long. Because it doesn't get dark up there that late in May till like 10 o'clock, So that by the time we got done eating, it was 7, and both of us forgot to bring. And it was hot out there that day. It was like in the mid to upper 80s, So it's super hot, and both of us forgot to bring a camping chair. So we're sitting in this pickup truck with the windows down, and about 8 o'clock, immediately in the woods off to our left, we hear a loud whoop, woo, and then an immediate response in the woods behind us. A response, woo, and then an immediate response off to our right in the woods, woo, like a triangular thing, like they're signaling each other, they're ready, And I look at my buddy, he looks at me, and I go, man, do you hear all that? And he goes, yeah. I said, dude, I don't know if I can do this. I said, I'm not ready, man. I said, I don't know. I said, I thought we're on the opposite side of the river from all the other activity. I said, I don't know if I can do this. And he goes, well, maybe it's just coincidence, So I just like had it in my mind, okay, So like 8 o'clock, we're like dead. We've been up for like 30 hours, and we're dead to the world. And he crawls in his tent, and I crawl in mine, and I'm laying on top of the sleeping bag. And in my tent, I have my sleeping bag, a pillow. I took my hiking boots off, and I had a backpack. I had 2 firearms in there. I had in a holster next to me, I had a Smith & Wesson 500 and a 550 cal revolver, and then in my hand, I had a FNX 45, and the safety's on, obviously, and I wasn't like sleeping with it in my hand, but it was laying right next to me, and so I'm laying there on my back, and my buddy's in his tent, and I hear this thump on my tent, and it's still light out, and I'm like, what was that, And then I look at the area down at the tent where my feet are, and I hear this thump again, but I see this indentation on my tent, and it was a rock hit my tent, and my buddy's like 6 feet from me. And I said, hey, Doug, they're throwing rocks at my tent. And he goes, yeah, they're throwing them at mine too. I said, man, I don't know if I can do this. And he said, well, we'll just see what happens. So he's snoring away. And so from like 8:30 on to like 10, I'm hearing this loud thumping noise like right on the outer skirts of our campground. And it's still light out. And I couldn't figure out what it was. I figured out later what it was is they were pounding their feet on the ground trying to intimidate us. That went on for quite a while, and then I remember at 10:32 when this happened, I looked at my watch. It said 10:32. I hear this in the woods just outside our campsite. I hear this crack, and then boom! They pushed a tree over, and I'm just out of my mind at that point. I'm trembling in my tent. I'm scared like this puppy. It's now dark, and my buddy's snoring away, and my tent is about 2 feet from the right rear wheel of the truck, and I could hear something walk up. What sounds like it walks up towards the truck, and then if you had like a woman with fingernails puts her hand on a vehicle, it wasn't metallic, like metal on metal, but it was like she puts her nails on the paint, you could hear a tapping noise. So I thought I heard like this tapping noise on the hood, and then I hear something slowly walk past my tent, and then it walks through our campsite for a few minutes, and then it left. And then a little while later, I hear these loud footsteps like come charging at my tent. Boom, 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 and it gets right to my tent and stops, like it's trying to charge my tent and scare me. And then I hear this crinkling noise, like if you take a tarp and the plastic, you squeeze it, it makes like a crunching noise. And so your tent is made of nylon, and then it has like that tarp floor, waterproof tub floor. And so I hear this crinkling noise, and I'm like, man, what's that noise, you know? And I feel the floor under me of my tent being like pulled from underneath me. And so I picked my 45 up, and I clicked the safety off, and I thought they were going to drag my tent away, and I turned my headlamp on, and I thought my headlamp would scare it, but at my base of my feet, I had this octagon-shaped tent, and each side of the octagon was like 2 to 2.5 feet around. The very end of where my feet are, I see something grabbing my tent, and I could see these like hands like twice the size of my hands, and I see the knuckles pushing in on the nylon, and it's grabbing my tent, and it's squeezing the bottom of my tent, and then it would run off. Boom, 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 boom. Then a few minutes later, it would come back over like it was charging my tent. Boom, 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 get real loud, and then it would kneel down and do the same thing. And then, you know, they would run off, and that went on for a while. Then they would come through our camp and run through, boom, 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 push down on the top of our tent, you know. And my buddy called out to me at like 2 in the morning, and he's like, Mark, are you awake? And I said, yeah, I'm awake. He goes, they're in the camp. I said, I just heard him, felt him run past my tent. He goes, I felt the vibration. I said, dude, you slept through 99% of it. I said, they've done nothing but harass me all night and play with my tent. And so he fell back asleep, and this went on all night. I mean, until like 4:15 in the morning. Just harassed us the entire evening in our tents. And so the entire night I'm in my tent, like every second seemed like a minute. Every minute seemed like an hour. Every hour seemed like an eternity. You know, it's like, I'm like, it's 3 o'clock, you know, it's 3:01, you know, I mean, it's like, come on, light, you know, it's going to get light at like 4:30. And I was freaked out of my mind. At one point when it was grabbing my tent in the middle of the night and squeezing it and I could see its hands, I literally had the barrel of my handgun right up to the edge of the tent, and what I was waiting for it to do is maybe have push its face on the tent. And I was so scared out of my mind that if it had done that, if it had put its head up to the edge of the tent, I would have just shot it right in the head, because I was so freaked out. And I've never, I mean, that was, other than getting pushed down and then, you know, now this, you know, I was completely freaked out. So this went on till like 4:15 in the morning, and 4:30 the sun was up a little bit more, and it had ended. And at 5 o'clock, I hear my buddy open the zipper on his tent, and it's light out. And I said, "Hey, are you out of your tent?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you see anything?" And he goes, "No." And I said, unlock your truck. So with his remote, he unlocks his truck, and I put my Smith & Wesson 500 in the backpack, and I had my 45 in my hand, and I put my hiking boots on, and I got out of my tent, and I got in the truck and locked the door. And he comes over, and he goes, "What's up?" I said, "I want to leave right now. Get your stuff. Let's go. I want to leave now." And he goes, "You don't want your tent?" I said, "No, I don't want it. I want to leave right now." So he went over, and he grabs his tent real quick and throws it in the bag of his truck in his sleeping bag, and he gets in. He goes, "What's up?" And I said, just get out of here. So on the way home, I told him everything that happened, and I go, "Dude, you slept through all of it, man." I said, "Dude, they harassed me the entire night." I said, I don't know if I can do this, you know. And then I look back on it. It's like, you know, we're miles back there from anybody. They could have killed us, but they didn't. You know, they were just curious and playing with our heads, you know, and they obviously didn't want us there.
So this area, you've been researching it from Memorial Day to Labor Day pretty steadily. Do you get a lot of activity in just that same area?
Yeah. So I get home and I go on Google Maps and go to the satellite view of the area. And what I didn't realize is that I find on maps where all of our original activity was in my original sighting area. And then now what just happened at this campsite, we're directly on the opposite side of the river from it. I mean, directly. If you were to draw a straight line and go about a mile across from where we were at in the trees across the river to through the other trees to where, and it's like directly across the river.
Yeah, and the river that you crossed, how deep was it?
Right now, it's probably 3 to 4 feet. They're obviously crossing the river. I mean, just from some of the tracks we found on the river, it looks like some of the tracks come directly out of the water. So they are crossing the river. But I'm thinking, okay, did they see us out there walking around on the sandbars at the edge of the river and then follow us back? Or like we didn't even have any inclination of any sound, anything out there. You know, we found that one print when we were out there, but that was it. But until after an hour after, you know, we were done eating after we cooked. So it was like, okay, did the smell bring in others from nearby, or did some of them cross the river and follow us, you know?
Mark, I kind of wondered too, like, are they familiar with you and that you leave food for them? Or I was just curious too, when you were gifting, did you always tie everything up with paracords or did you leave it out for them?
No, back in the original sighting area on that down tree where we saw those mushrooms and snails and slugs, we were leaving apples and stuff out there, and everywhere we've been, we've tried to leave something. But that one area back there where the original sighting area is, we concentrated our first 3 months, specifically in that small little area. One time we were back there leaving apples on that down log, and the log is like 4 feet off the ground, so you can't really step over. You got to kind of roll over the top of it to the other side. And so my buddy was trying to roll over it to get to the other side of the log, and every time he tried to roll over, you know, there's thick brush all back through there. We kept hearing this like grunting warning noise. It was like, you know, and that would stop. And then my buddy would try and roll over again, and from the brush we'd hear, you know, like it's giving us a warning. So we would just leave apples there and leave, you know. And but we did find, and I have a picture of it, impressions right there in the moss at the where we were gifting, you know. But it's hard, you know, there's not any soft dirt back there. It's all moss, so you have to get back there to find an impression pretty quick, within, you know, a couple hours. But we do have a picture of one impression. It's like 17 inches long. You know. But so yeah, we had the encounter at that campsite, and then we were going to go camp again, and it was at the end of June. It took me a month to get my nerve up even to go back out there. So like the whole month of June, I just wouldn't do it. I wouldn't go out there. And my buddy wanted to go out there on a Saturday night again to camp at the same spot, and I said, I don't know if I can. And he goes, well, go out there the day before. I said, I'm not going alone. And so we took another friend of ours who's not a believer at all, total skeptic. And so we went. The thought was, okay, I'm going to take this other guy out there the day before on a Friday afternoon, and we're going to go out there and look for prints on the sandbars in the same spot. But right before you come back to the trailhead on the sandbar, I'm going to leave a small little Ghetto Blaster CD player, and I'm going to put a children's music CD in it of children singing Disney songs, and I'm going to hit repeat so it'll play until the batteries go dead, so it should play all night. And kind of our thought process they'll come out onto the sandbar to investigate, and we'll get prints out there. So I have a head camera on and a backpack camera on, and my buddy's with me, and I press play, and I hide the camera kind of under this piece of driftwood, and we're walking away, and you can hear it playing, and we get almost up to the trailhead, and my buddy, I didn't hear the initial tree knock, but my buddy goes, hey, did you hear that? It was tree knocking. And I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, I didn't hear it because the stereo was playing in the background. He goes, yeah, dude, there was just tree knocking right up here on this, sounds like it's coming back in on this trail, but maybe in the brush off the trail. I go, you sure? And he goes, yeah. So on camera, I told him, I said, okay, I got a head camera on. So now he's free. He was an unbeliever, so now he's freaked out. It's like the first thing he's heard, you know, of anything. You know, he's not real sure what's going on. So I said, okay, I'll take the lead. So we step off, we climb up like this 4-foot berm off the riverbank onto the trail, and we walk in about. Now we got to step through the brush, through this really narrow trail, and we walk in about 30 feet, and immediately in the brush off to our left, we hear this tree knocking again, and it's, you know, maybe, you know, 40, 50 feet in from us. And I'm like looking at him, and he's looking at me, and it's like we've got clear audio of it, you know, and even the video of, you know, of his reaction, you know, and me, I'm just freaking out. And so, but I didn't know it was there Bigfoot until I got home and watched it on video. And I thought I saw something out of the corner of my eye later before we started to walk down, but I hear the tree knocking again, and so I thought, well, I'm going to whistle. So I whistled, and then we get a whistle back, and I thought, oh, man, that's strange. So we're standing there, and I tell my buddy, hey, get the audio recorder out of my backpack. So he gets the audio recorder in my backpack, and we turned to walk back towards the truck on the trail, and I thought I saw on the trail in front of the trail goes through this narrow patch of brush, and then the trail dips down a berm and goes down about 4 feet, and then you get on the trail again. And I thought I saw this black thing walking on the trail, and it looked like it was like the strangest thing I've ever seen. It looked like it was like when a person walks and they bob up and down and walk, you know. I mean, you know, it's distinct walking, you know. This thing looked like it was like gliding on a skateboard. There was no bobbing up and down. It's about 70 to 80 feet from me, through the trees, down a 4-foot incline. So I'm kind of looking down at it, and it's like it's gliding, like it's on a skateboard or a conveyor belt. There was no bobbing up and down. It was like smooth, like motion, and then it disappears around this tree, and I'm just like, I thought to myself, man, we got to walk that same path to get to my pickup truck. I'm like freaked out of my mind. So we start walking, and we walk through there, and nothing happened. And I was just like, I didn't know what that was, you know. And so we get back to the truck, and my buddy's just like, man, that was freaky. I said, yeah, I know. I said, you a believer now? And he goes, yeah. And okay, so we get home, and I drop him off at his house, and I download the video. And what I didn't see was when we were standing there and we heard the tree knocking, directly blocking our path, standing in between two trees. It was standing, once you get to these two trees, you have to go down this 4-foot berm. It was standing down at the bottom of the berm, looking at us between these two trees, and I never saw it when we were standing there. I only caught it on video camera. So, you know, I was like, you know, man, I never even knew it was there, and you know, and I did see the black thing walking away from us. And even at that point, I wasn't sure what it was. But now I see this thing standing in between the two trees. You know, it was like, for it to stand there at its height, you know, it had to be 8.5 feet tall, you know. And so now I'm like, call my buddy, and you know, it's next morning, and I'm like, dude, he goes, we going to camp out there? I said, I don't know if I can, man. I said, I can't do it, you know. I said, I won't do it. He goes, well, let's go back and get the ghetto blaster. So we went back and got it, and I just told him, I said, yeah, I can't do it, you know. And then, so, you know, a few weeks later, I went out there and hung cameras with that wildlife veterinarian. I told you about the smell I heard and everything. And then we've been out there to a few other areas before, just hiking around looking for prints. And then we went out there yesterday. And we ran into, in our adventures out there, we ran into a guy who lives in a cabin out there, and he's retired Navy too. And him and I talk quite a bit, and he knows the entire valley like the back of his hand. And he said, listen, he goes, I'm not a Bigfooter. He goes, but I've been all over fishing out here, hiking up into the mountains alone. He goes, cutting firewood. He goes, I've seen and heard a lot of strange stuff out here. And he goes, if you want some pretty good stuff, he goes, go back to the end of that road you do investigating on and go to the dead end, and it dead ends back another 5 miles. He goes, go camp out there. And so we did yesterday. We went out there. First we went out and hiked a bunch of sandbars and stuff in different areas of the river, and we did find a couple old weathered prints. And so we went down to the end of that road and parked the truck, and as soon as we get out of the truck, right there on the edge of the road where the tree line, there's this footprint, and I took pictures of it, and I had a tape measure, and I measured it, and it's 17 inches long and like 9 inches wide, and it's right there on the edge of the road. And then my buddy, like, he goes, man, listen to that, and we heard that samurai chatter again, you know, and it was like, man, we're camping here, you know, this is going to be awesome. So
were you guys out there in tents again?
We decided not to sleep in tents. We slept inside his truck again. And so last night I put apples out and candy bars, and then I put an audio recorder out, and we camped there all night, and I woke up a few times last night, and I could hear some whooping noises and something sounded like it was walking near the truck in the trees. You can hear some snapping and popping. I heard some tree knocks in the morning. I was in and out of sleep all night. I was trying to stay up, but I couldn't. So we woke up in the morning, and some of the apples were gone, and some of the Snickers bars were gone, and we couldn't find any more prints. And I told my buddy, I said, hey, on the audio recorder, I bought it's the kind of thing we've been lacking in is good audio. So I went out and bought this Tascam DR5 audio recorder, and I was kind of shocked. Today I've been listening. I've got probably 12 hours of audio to listen to, and I've listened to about 3 hours, but there's definite tree knocking and some rock clacking on the audio. It's pretty, and I still got to go through a bunch more of it and try and get the whooping. I know I heard whooping, so that's kind of where we stand right now. So.
Well, Mark, thanks again for coming on Sasquatch Syndicate. And for those out there listening, if you want to get in touch with Mark, if you want to share tactics or research, feel free to reach out to the show directly, sasquatchsyndicate.com, and hit the contact us button. We'll put you in touch with Mark. I don't want to air his email address, just to protect him from spam, but we'll definitely get in touch with Mark. So, Mark, since your first encounter, obviously you've done a lot of research, and you've really started to open up about your experiences. How does it feel to talk about it?
I like to talk about it. I'm not tooting my horn or anything. I want people to hear about my encounter and maybe help them some way of research, and not just going out there and hanging game cameras and coming back every 3 months. If they want to email me, like I gave my email address, please do, and discuss it with you. But I like to talk about it. I think it's now a subject I wasn't interested in just over a year ago to now something that I'm obsessed with. So.
Right on. Well, hey, thanks again for coming on. We really do appreciate it. And
yeah, sure.
We'll be in touch over email. If something pops up, we'll shoot it over to you as well. But
okay. Yeah,
all right.
Enjoyed talking. So, all right,
yeah, we'll keep you posted. Thanks, Mark.
All right, bye.
This concludes our October 2016 podcast. Sasquatch Syndicate will return on Tuesday, November 1st. Thanks to our listeners and those who have been out to our website and those following us on social media. Sasquatch is a controversial subject, so for all the believers and disbelievers and those that will tell you they have all the answers, just remember, we're flying through space at 700 miles per hour. Buckle up.